So all I'm going to start with is just a quick introduction of who Best Practice Network are and who the Outstanding Leadership Partnership and how we work really. And for those that don't know, we've been an organisation that have delivered NPQs with the Department for Education in England since 2012. And over the past 3 years, we've supported over 14,000 participants through the National Professional Qualifications, and indeed have started delivering them internationally, hence today's webinar, over the past 3 or 4 years. And we've so far welcomed well over 1,500 international participants. And I think at the last count, it was 81 countries where they've come from. So it's been really amazing to see people from all over the world, and indeed in the chat box just now. As well as the NPQs, we also deliver various other programs as well, such as the Early Career Framework, that we've run a pilot scheme with IRAM in Qatar, which has been really exciting. And we also deliver other programs such as apprenticeships, initial teacher training, NSENCO qualifications around SEN, and teaching assistant qualifications. Some of these are not available yet internationally, but certainly are on the agenda for us to expand our offer and our support for schools over the coming sort of 12 to 24 months. In terms of our core values on the left-hand side, we very much believe in working collaboratively across best practice ourselves, but also across our network of schools all over the world. Acting with integrity, the best for, at the end of the day, it's all about the pupils in our networks and in the schools that we support. Striving for excellence and providing the best programs possible with the most up-to-date research that is available from both the UK, but also from around the world, as we can further contextualize the programs for our international audience, and then ultimately inspiring learning for all within that network and all around this circle, and hopefully with all of you attending today as well. So with that, I'll pass over to Martin initially to talk further about the programs and focusing on the Leadership National Professional Qualifications.
Thanks for that, Jamie. Just before I start, this morning, it's interesting, I was facilitating on the Executive Leadership NPQ, and one of the most interesting things is that these are the heads that are becoming CEOs, directors of the larger chains globally. I mean, we had representatives today from GEMS, Nordangler, including regions such as the UK, Spain, Bulgaria, which is Romania, Middle East, and China, and Malaysia. Now, these up-and-coming CEOs and executive leaders were all working together and sharing together. And I think it's a key aspect of the NPQ. These are people who are all in a similar situation, all in remote different places, and they were forming their own support network within the development of the NPQ framework. So going back to that slide where it mentions working together, it's a really key issue. These are really engaged in developing their skills, but also the skills of the people within their network. So if we have a look at the NPQ programs, there are 6. And that's where one of the things that you'll notice is that the new specialist NPQs would technically replace the old middle leadership programs. But what we've found, particularly in our international market, that's not the case. And what's actually happened is that we've had relatively senior colleagues above middle leadership who may all of a sudden have been placed into a position where they've got to manage the CPD for an entire school, and they really feel that they could do with some networking among other schools, and some as well as the learning and the online learning and development and coaching that we provide through best practice. So when we look at the specialist NPQs, which is leading teaching, that is really more specific to people who are going to lead a phase, or are going to lead an English department, a maths department, and things like that. And then we have the leading teaching development, which is really focusing on how we get teachers through continuous professional development. Now, that particular LTD could appeal to anyone at even quite senior as deputy headship and assistant headship, if they are all suddenly as we know what happens in schools, all of a sudden somebody says, you'll look after the CPD. Well, if you were doing the LTD NPQ, it would mean that all of a sudden you'd be placed with a load of people in international settings who also will be struggling with the same issues of how do we get external and internal CPD running within our school. And the same as I'd go as far as if you were given more pastoral responsibility within a school, you could be looking at the leading behaviour and culture, helping you in that pastoral element within your institution. One of the interesting things as well is that if we look then the SL, the H and the EL are the same as in the previous programme, except there's no longer a school improvement project, and it's now been replaced by 1 week of summative assessment that's in the programme at the very end, and it's normally in the form of a 1,500-word essay based on a school project that's directly relevant to you. Very easy, very accessible through the programme. Okay. Should we go on to the next slide? So who can apply? So the SL really is for those people who are aspiring to move to the next level, those people moving into senior leadership and those who are already in senior leadership. So we're looking at assistant heads there and those heads of the department that are moving into whole school responsibility. NPQ for headship. And again, those are the deputies who are aspiring to become heads, and those heads who feel that they need to get access to the best practice networks, associates group, those of us that are working together on those programs. I can't stress enough how with these programs, the collaboration and networking that's taking place on them is second to none. I mean, it's probably the most, I shouldn't say it really, but it is probably the most valuable part of the course. We were doing a whiteboard activity today where people were dropping in their email addresses where they were requiring help, and email addresses where people were requiring, said they had great expertise, let's say in terms of like governance of a school, managing schools or managing different types of governance of schools. Absolutely outstanding work. And of course, there's our premier product, which is the executive leadership. And those are for the people who are aspiring to they are either in a position where they're running more than one school, or they're in a position where they are aspiring. They've already got their NPQH, and they're looking to move to that level where they'll be managing networks of schools. Okay, so this is the way the program works. They're 18-month qualifications, quite intensive. You really do need to think about allocating yourself the time that's put down here in order to really dive into the courses. And we find that they're actually, they're quite addictive, the courses are. People really do engage with them. And again, we're going to go on in a few slides, but not just yet. You'll notice that the cost of the courses it's quite a fair amount, and there's a reason behind that. Is there is a high level of human engagement here. You know, I mean, the two other facilitators that I was working with today, we're all either practicing or executive leaders, leaders of education for counties and cities, leaders of education for international bodies. I mean, the amount of experienced facilitation that you get on these programs is absolutely outstanding. You will also be given a one-to-one coach, and those one-to-one coaches again aren't just coaches. These are ex-head teachers or currently practicing head teachers, very, very skilled in the job. So if you look at the NPQ SL, there's 4 days, full face-to-face days with expert facilitators. On the NPQH, there's 5, and on the EL, there's 6. There's 38 hours of online course study, which is very interactive and directly linked to practice. Again, written by current and leading professional heads and executive heads. You get performance coaching of 10 hours, and you have to submit 20 or 28 or 34 hours worth of formative assessment tasks. And those, again, they're mini tasks based on the focus areas within the NPQ. What you find with the formative assessment tasks, again, is they'll be relevant to the things you're really doing in daily life in the current position. And then there's the summative assessment stage, which is the 8 weeks where you submit your 1,500 word essay. That is a fixed window, and it's opened by the Department for Education in the UK. And that has to be submitted and completed within 8 days of that summative assessment stage. So you can see the learning hours down there, and it really does take that time. So you need to make sure that within within the governance of your school, that they understand that there's a real commitment to professional development required for you on this course. Okay, thank you. Right.
So it looks like, sorry to jump in, Martin, it looks like Iram's lost connection. It looks like she's not on the panel anymore. So hopefully she'll be able to come back to us shortly, and we can come back to this slide sort of in a moment. So let's carry on, and we'll come back to this in a bit.
Yeah. Again, just before I move on to that section, I'll say that, Jamie, it was interesting that both yesterday when we were delivering and today, the reason why Iram is just all of a sudden become indisposed is these are professional leaders in education. And we noticed it with Abby yesterday, didn't we? That she was on one of the settings in her school because she was interrupted by a group of children at one point. So these are very face-to-face courses with real people working in situ at the moment.
Absolutely. And it looks like we may have just got Iram. Can you hear us?
Move on to my slide next slide while she's preparing.
Sounds good. We'll do one more slide and we'll come back to this one in a moment.
Okay, so this is the contents of the framework that comes to us from the Department for Education. Now, one of the interesting things, and it is the difference between the best practice network and just doing an NPQ, is that throughout the NPQ, it really focuses on the ethical principles and the behaviours of leadership. It's not a bolt-on. It's the way in which the team of professional colleagues have designed the course to meet the needs of current professionals in education. And so we build on and extend on what is the DFE framework. But of course, we adhere to the DFE framework too, so that it makes it a DFE accredited course with a great deal of enrichment. Interestingly as well is that we do additional face-to-face and additional one-to-one mentoring that's actually not required by the DFE. We do more than is required. So of course we touch on areas such as the culture of the school and how as a leader that we either change the culture of school or we enhance it, or that we certainly take ownership of it. Again, we wouldn't be delivering an education course without teaching at the heart of it. And again, the curriculum and how we assess. And again, when we look at courses such as leading behaviour and culture, behaviour is a key element. And how do we model that behaviour? Not just, of course, when we move into NPQs, not just at the level of children, at the level of staff. How do we influence the culture? How do we develop culture? And how do we behave as staff? And how do we expect our staff to behave within our school? We have a focus on special education and all needs and disabilities, which is a key area in international schools because there's often, not always, a little bit less access to special needs than you would have in the UK. Again, how we deliver professional development among staff, organisational management, implementation. And now this is a key element of the NPQ. This is where, this isn't just theory, this is how we in practice have good ideas, or we identify needs and we use a deliberate practice model to implement them in our real organisation, and then we monitor and have the feedback to see how they're running. The great thing with the NPQ is you'll be doing that as certain parts of your formative assessment tasks, and then you'll share them with other international people who may be doing similar things as you are, working in partnership, which is great. And it's about how we communicate between our own schools and, again, with partner schools and globally. And again, how we manage and deal with governance and accountability within our organisation. Do we have Imran back yet?
Hi, I'm
Imran.
so sorry about that. I've just had some connection issues, but yeah, so I'm just going to thank you, Martin, for handing over to me. I'm going to start by just introducing myself and ILM Education and what we're actually doing in Qatar. So we have set up our consultancy company, an education consultancy company, for about 18 months now, running quite successfully across Qatar, where we're working with several schools to support them in their professional development, school improvement, leadership coaching and mentoring, recruitment, and other educational services. With regards to my own background, I've actually been delivering the NPQs since 2016 and moved over to best practice when I moved to Qatar. I was a head teacher in the UK for a number of years. We were an outstanding school, and I'm also a local leader of education in the UK as well. So I'm still doing a lot of work with the academy that I used to work with, doing school improvement projects. So I'm going back often to kind of support with that. Now, with regards to our partnership with Best Practice, I think one of the main reasons we decided to pair up was the internationally recognized credibility of Best Practice working across the globe. And for us, that's something that really kind of, particularly being a new business, was something that really supported our development in the region that we're working with. Any school that you go to across the Middle East will have heard of Best Practice. So it's very easy to kind of talk about the programs that we're delivering. The other thing is that I've found, particularly with Best Practice, is that they don't just leave you to it. There's ongoing support. There's complete accessibility. I'm sure Jamie will tell you how many times I'm always texting him and WhatsApping him when any of our participants have any queries. So that response, I think, is absolutely key, particularly when we're introducing a completely new structure of delivery in Qatar. The other thing I would say with the NPQs and the value of them is that the content is incredibly useful to enable strong leadership in schools, but on an international level. And what participants are able to do is to bring their own real life, real time challenges and be able to seek advice by speaking to other participants, by speaking to the facilitators, and take back that practical learning of strategies for them to use in their daily practice. And this has been incredibly impactful for international schools, as it reflects the high standards expected in UK schools. So they're not losing their skills and their development and their experience by moving internationally, because they're still retaining the knowledge and all the new kind of things that are being brought into education that are being taught or being delivered in the UK. So it keeps them in touch with what's happening in the UK and the developments within the Department for Education. I suppose the best thing about the face-to-face facilitations that we found is for participants to network. In a region where private schools are quite dominant and often don't share best practice, don't really collaborate, this has been almost groundbreaking for Qatar, where it's allowing school-to-school collaboration. We're bringing communities together in this very private school industry, which results not only in improved outcomes for students in one school, but across the entire region, because what they're doing is they're able to have those professional dialogues, exchange ideas, share best practice, which really supports the longevity and the success of the program. Our facilitators are fully trained with best practice, and the training, I can assure everyone, is very rigorous. The safeguarding checks for all of our facilitators are in place. So again, that kind of supports the entire process, where our facilitators are able to give real advice based on their own experience, their skills, their knowledge, and their behaviors. We actually delivered our first NPQSL event face-to-face, which was incredibly successful. Feedback was very positive. And one of the leaders, it was an assistant head in a major academy, said that this was the first training that he actually felt he learned something practical that he could take back to his school that would not only improve his practice, but improve the practice of those that he worked with. And that's because of the content of the courses that that best practices have put together. They're very strategy based, very theory based, a lot of focus on leadership behaviors, and it's just been incredibly positive, and we really hope that we'll be able to continue to develop a very successful program, not only in this region but expanding across other regions as well. And I just thought it was very important to share that with you all, because it makes it very real, and to see what it is actually like in an international arena, which is often very different to what UK schools look like, because the challenges are always so different. But thank you so much to Best Practice for allowing me to speak to you all, and for being a very valuable partner of our consultancy company.
Oh, that's absolutely lovely. Thanks very, very, very much, Iram. One of the questions, though, I know that you're heralding and trailblazing with the ECF program as well. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So this is actually quite groundbreaking, because we are the first international, we've got the first international cohort for the ECF teachers here in Qatar, which is so positive, because what often happens is teachers, once they qualify, tend to move out abroad, and they tend to not complete that induction period. So the course that Best Practice offer mirrors what the UK are doing, so they're getting all of that training, and then when they go back to the UK, it's just a very quick assessment which finalizes their induction process. So it's a huge benefit for teachers here, but also incredibly beneficial for the international schools here, because what they're getting are teachers who are keen to learn, who invest in the school, who are engaging with professional development, not just from those in their own school and environment, but outside of it as well. And it's so robustly created. They've got online facilitation, they've got face-to-face facilitation, they've got the mentor training in schools. So it's a very beneficial program for the region, and I really hope that this kicks off again, not just in Qatar. It's something that really needs to go global.
That's absolutely great to hear. Could you just tell me so far what impact the course has had? Is there any direct impact, evidence of impact so far?
Absolutely. We've already had from our first facilitation event from the NPQs, where we delivered our NPQSL, have all joined a larger network meeting where they feel that they would really benefit from speaking to other heads, other assistant heads, other senior leaders who are in the same position, to support their own journeys and their own challenges, which is going to be an absolutely fantastic event, and incorporates all of our SL candidates, our MPQH candidates, and our ECT mentors as well. So that's something that's directly come off the delivery of the MPQs here in Qatar.
Thank you very much, Iman.
My pleasure.
I think just jump in. Iram's off to just about to attend another meeting, so I just want to say a big thank you for coming today. Thanks for bearing with the the technical trouble, and I'm sure we'll speak shortly.
Brilliant. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks very much for your time, Iram.
Bye.
Okay, so I've kind of touched on this now. I mean, again, just to reiterate what I was saying earlier, it just shows, you won't get any more qualified than Iram, working as an executive leader in education in the UK and in Qatar, and part of a partnership of educational consultants. Again, I think this is what Best Practice is doing. It really is trailblazing in terms of getting new initiatives, and we're starting to, that really is beginning to grow internationally. One of the interesting things, I can mirror it to when I first became part of leadership teams in the UK. They were very fragmented. CPD was very stale. When the national professional qualifications came in, it was very much more about networking and collaboration, and it has had a huge impact on the UK development of leaders and teachers. And I really believe that this is the emergence of it happening now internationally, as we see that exponential growth occurring with these NPQs. So let's go back down to how they're assessed. The whole program is developmental, as well as being a program where people network. It's also a study program, and it does take time. You will need to take time off, planned time off, in order to work through the formative assessment tasks, as well as the practice pieces as well. At the end, it requires a 1,500 word submission, and it identifies a problem, it identifies a solution, which we will all know that we're doing frequently within our schools. We set a rationale, and we identify the implementation steps. So it's nothing that we're not already doing. The difference is that we're taking the best educational research and networking, and we're applying it to a new problem, a new issue within a school, and actually we're documenting it as we go, so that we really do become what we begin to use the deliberate practice model. So we very clearly know what we're trying to achieve and whether or not we've achieved it, and how we go about doing that. I've already mentioned that there's an 8-day assessment window. We've got no choice over that. It's issued by the DFE. And again, that's the added benefit of ensuring that the programme is accredited directly by the DFE. Throughout the course, you have to have a minimum of 90% engagement. You have to do 100% of the face-to-face activities. But there are some parts where we can see on the online study where you may miss the odd bit, because we also know that there's everything from a school play to school emergencies, staffing issues, where you may not be able to engage quite as much. But it is a programme where you do require a high level of engagement. And again, the final assessment task can only be accredited if it's accessed at the correct times. Okay.
Great, cheers, Martin. So just before we come to the questions and answer section, and if you have any questions, do add them onto the Q&A box, which you can see at the top of your screen, hopefully. But our program fees, you can see on the screen, and they're also on our website for the various programs that we offer. And this covers all the training fees. Is the same for every country around the world, no matter where you're accessing the program from. So you can see the NPQSL is £1,550, the NPQH is £2,500, and then the NPQEL, which is the most sort of prestigious program, is then £5,950. We have a lot of questions around how the programs can be funded. So there's various options. To start with, that it might be the case that you're going to self-fund the program, so you're paying it for it yourself. In that instance, you can either pay for it upfront, you can pay it over 3 installments termly, or you can pay it in a direct debit over 10 months. So there's options to split the funding over a period of time if you so wish. However, I would note that if you're paying for it as an individual, then there is VAT at 20% added to the cost of the course fee, which is how international trade works for these particular programs. However, if your school fund it, then there isn't any VAT added, so you don't have to pay that extra 20%. So if it is at all possible, it might be worth looking into whether your school can fund it, and then they'll claim it back from your salary, either over a period of time or in one go, potentially. Something worth considering if that's something that's an option for you and your school. Thirdly, your school may fund it outright, so pay for the full cost, and that may come with a form of either just coming out of CPD budget, or you might be able to agree a sort of a golden handshake type of agreement that if you complete the program, you'll then stay at the school for a period of time and obviously, kind of earn back, the money that way, which is a very popular route. And I think it's good, Martin will probably join in a sec, but to be able to go to your school with various options and how it can be funded, we find in our experience helps with being able to get that, signed off and approved by your relevant CPD lead, director or head teacher as kind of appropriate. And now this the fourth bullet point here is something that when Martin was executive leader in an international school group, you had quite, you undertook quite a lot, Martin.
Absolutely, Jamie. I think you're spot on there. And for those of you who are worried about the funding or whether or not the organisation will fund on your behalf, have a plan. I always really appreciated it when teachers came to me with a kind of a fair deal, spending upwards of £1,000 on one individual for CPD. Well, that might not be within my budget, but if somebody comes to me and says to me, look, I'll stay for 3 years, so that's £300 or so, or £400 per year of CPD on me. Would that be a good deal? And if I leave after 2 years, I'll still owe a third of that back to the school to put back in their CPD budget. A little bit of negotiation with me was always very much appreciated. And it meant that it was a good method for me to retain staff. We all know that retention in international schools is it's problematic, and therefore having a deal with it might be with your governors if you're already ahead or you're an executive leadership, then having a method of saying this is pretty good value for money. I mean, the course in itself is good value for money because of the quality of the course, but actually also for those who are thinking of self-funding, there's 2 points that I would first of all bear in mind, is that in the UK, most, if not all people now in the senior leadership positions are undertaking NPQs. So if you ever wish to return to the UK, you will be competing against other staff with these qualifications. And in the near future, the people leaving the UK to teach abroad, all the way from early careers framework, all the way through to the specialist NPQs, and then the leadership NPQs, you will be finding that the export of British teachers, they will be carrying these qualifications with them. So you might need to keep up with the Joneses. I certainly would be if I was abroad without one of these qualifications. And the other thing is, in terms of value for money, if we look at someone doing just a specialist NPQ on a standard teacher's salary, moving to head of department by doing something like lead teaching, will immediately gain, in the UK, it would be a minimum of £3,000 to £12,000 per year directly would be added on top of your salary. So again, it's a qualification that leads directly to promotion. And those of you who are deputies, you'll be competing against other deputies that want to go into headship, doing something like an NPQH, and they will have these qualifications. And if they haven't got them now, certainly with the amount of staff internationally and certainly locally in the UK, they will have these qualifications. And again, moving from deputies to head, when you look at the pay gap, it makes these courses extremely good value for money over time.
Thanks. Cheers, Martin. Thanks. And finally, in terms of next steps, if you haven't already done so, you can go onto our website, so the outstandingleaders.org/international, or onto our bestpractice.co.uk website. And on there, you can view the program brochures. You can also view the DFE, very detailed materials about what the program involves. And very much around the learn to and learn how to statements that go alongside the program. On there as well, you can apply directly for the relevant qualification you wish to move forward to. And I would just note that I would recommend, if you've not done so already, to have a chat with your school CPD lead or your director or your head teacher as appropriate for the course you're applying for, and just get their support as well. As part of the process, we'll need to reach out to them to obtain approval for you to undertake the course. So it's worth having that chat now if you haven't already. And it's just as a note that the next intake commences in February, and the application deadline for that is the 16th of December, which is around 2 weeks away. So it's still a little bit of time to apply and get your application in if you've not already done so. And finally, before we come to the questions and answers, and I see there's a few in there we'll go through in a moment, but these 3 statements are from their recent NPQH alumni, so they've just finished the program, and I think they're really nice statements around how they found the programs, how they found the networking, which we've touched upon as a really key aspect of the course, how they found our coaches and the program in more detail. And as we going back right to the start and about our values, we obtained feedback after every training day, at the end of every course, whether they finished or left. And that's a really vital part of how we continue to develop the programs, specifically in the international sector over the coming years, and as we further tailor that. But really nice statements to read and hear back from some of our completers. And finally, that's the end of the presentation. So we'll come on to the onto the questions, which Tom, if you don't mind fielding some of those, and we'll do our best to answer them in the time we've got available.
Hey, no problem. Thank you both. That was a great presentation. Thanks to Iram, who had to leave us sadly. We'll dive into the questions, but if you have any questions, we've got another 20 minutes. So if you'd like to ask them now live to our experts, then please pop them into the Q&A box. Alternatively, you can email us at a time of your choosing. Okay, we'll start off with Zishan. Zishan says, would you say that middle leaders would be best served by the NPQ SL if they are thinking about moving up to a deputy or assistant head role? How would this differ from the NPQH? Martin, could you take that one?
Yeah, okay. So the SL really is for assistant heads moving into a more senior role. So again, it's qualifying them at that senior level. One of the interesting things that the course does is it gives you the language of leadership. So by doing an SL, it will be giving you similar training, similar educational language to those people who've already done the H and even the EL. Actually, all of the language of learning is the same, and it puts you on that level. And really, somebody as a middle leader wouldn't be accepted on a H program yet, but they would be accepted on the SL program. So the next step, they'll have been running a department, 5 or 6 teachers within that department. So the next step would be going on a whole school leadership program. I would also say to them, though, to think carefully about the specialist NPQs, because a specialist NPQ could be the area that you're looking at moving into. So if you're moving into wanting to become like a pastoral deputy or a curriculum deputy, the NPQ LT for a curriculum route and the NPQ LBC for the pastoral route would be very appropriate as well. So you may not need to actually go to the SL, but it's possible.
Brilliant. Thanks, Martin. Jamie, do you have anything to add?
No, I would just, in a nutshell, I'd say if you're a middle leader at the moment, then yes, absolutely, the NPQSL or one of the specialist NPQs is the one you should look at. And then perhaps once you're into that deputy head and assistant head role, then you can look at the NPQH to look at headship roles. That's the way you want to go.
All right, brilliant. Thanks, Jamie. Okay, this question's from Muhammad. What is the status of NPQs in education in academic scale? I mean, compared to other master's degrees in education or MBA in education management, etc. Please, Jamie. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so with the NPQs at the leadership level, they come with 60 master's credits. So they are kind of on the way to achieving a master's in education or in education leadership or educational leadership. So they are less academic heavy and more involved on actually making a difference, to your role in your school. So yes, it's working towards a master's, but it's much more practical, I'd say, than perhaps the standard master's qualification. Would you agree with that, Martin?
Absolutely. They're two different things in one sense. One is a theory-based course, and the NPQs are theory and practice-based courses, and that's the difference. Somebody doing an MEd could specialize in a very fine, small area of school practice that's almost irrelevant to the day-to-day running of a school. The NPQs are directly related. And in the UK, they're far more highly relevant to those who are moving into leadership positions, and also internationally. I would be very reluctant as a principal and as of a group of schools that I certainly wouldn't take a head that didn't have an NPQH in a British school, and I would be resistant to be taking a deputy as well without an SL or a H. And I think that's pretty common. As I mentioned, I was with the emerging and current CEOs of most of the big international chains this morning. And again, the reason why they're doing the EL is that they are recruiting people that are also have the NPQHs and the NPQSL. So in terms of the value is on the ground amongst the best leaders in education.
All right, brilliant. Thanks, guys. Another one from Mohammed. Can this qualification help to get a QTS?
So I'll pick that up.
No.
So QTS is qualified teacher status. That's a different aspect, and you would need to look at either an initial teacher training route or an equivalency testing. This isn't to do with being a qualified teacher. It's more about leading or supporting or coaching within a school.
Most people wouldn't be on these courses unless they've been working within a education that's UK curriculum based for at least 3 to 4 to 5 years, and certainly in a senior position in one of those schools with a full English curriculum before they'd even be looking at SLH, and certainly would be anywhere near that. So it's nowhere near the QTS level.
Yeah, I would say, just to add on as well, we frequently get asked if people can apply who don't hold QTS in the UK. And so in terms of the base eligibility, if you are a qualified teacher in the country that you're teaching in, and you work at a level that is suitable for this qualification, preferably, as Martin says, in a British or international school, then you are eligible. And QTS isn't necessarily a criteria of accessing the course.
Yeah, that's absolutely spot on. That is, isn't it, Jamie? You don't need QTS to do the course. They're not related.
It's different. Yeah. And I think just Tom, on the next question as well, if I jump in, which countries and curriculums recognize this qualification? All countries. Yeah. So we have participants from all over the world who do these. There's internationally recognized in terms of countries. I think specifically in the Middle East, they are very highly recognized. And China, we have huge swathes of applicants, but ultimately, everywhere. It would be my short answer.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, guys. This one's from Anonymous. Do more deputy heads study for headship or senior leaders NPQ? What's the key differences? I think we've touched on this already.
I think it probably depends where you are in your deputy head journey. If you've only just taken up a deputy head post, I'd probably lean towards the SL, especially if you're in a smaller school. If you're an established deputy head, then you're looking to headship, then do the NPQH. But take a look at the program brochures, speak to your head teacher or director, and come to a conclusion. And speak to us. Yes, of course. Yeah.
Brilliant. This one's from Madeline James. For international NPQSL, where face-to-face is considered, will this be on Zoom?
Yeah, so around 75-80% of our participants are distance learners, and we use Zoom as our platform. In certain locations, we do have face-to-face in-person opportunities. It's difficult to be able to guarantee where those are exactly right now, but if you get in touch with us, we should be able to give you an idea.
All right, cheers, Jamie. Julia Lepine says, are all applicants accepted onto the course?
No. Unfortunately not. So everyone who applies, you apply onto the website. We look through everyone's applications to ensure eligibility and suitability. We obtain support from your school, so your sponsor, who says it's fine for you to undertake the program. So we do a few base checks. I would say that most people do get on if they hit the eligibility, but we do have those checks in place to make sure everyone is undertaking the right program for them at their stage in their career.
Okay, thank you. Another one from Mohammed. Really appreciate all your questions. Do we get a BA degree for this qualification or a certificate of participation?
So it's a certificate that is co-awarded by Best Practice Network and the Department for Education. So it's not a degree, it's a certificate of the NPQ that you've completed.
But you do get your 60 credits.
And you do get your 60 credits.
That's true. Thanks, guys. Natasha Harris says, are these qualifications recognized in Australia? I'm working in Dubai now, but will eventually return back to Australia. And I just wondered if they were recognized there.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And there was a group of schools in Southeast Australia, and well, I can't remember the name actually where it was, that's bad. But they're talking about them because they have a chain of international schools over there. And in that instance, then I would suggest yes. That for local domestic schools in Australia, probably not as much. Although they were looking at whether the 60 credits can be taken to an Australian university. And in their instance, it could have been that they would have accepted those credits as equivalent towards a master's over there. So yes and no, I would say.
On your yes and no, which is absolutely spot on, Jamie, I've actually worked with a great deal of a number of Australian educators, teachers, and amongst the international of us, it's very, very well recognised. So it's held in high esteem. And within international schools, as she will know, that there's a high number of international teachers that are Australian, and therefore the credibility of the course, and just purely the fact that it's actually accredited by the Department for Education in England. So that gives it its status. It has significant value.
Brilliant, thank you. Tanya says, how do the face-to-face meetings take place? I think we've touched on this. So they're
either over Zoom, through distance learning, or there are some opportunities for face-to-face learning, depending on where you live.
Okay, brilliant. Harushun says, is the program recognized and accredited globally, specifically in UAE?
Yes, and also specifically for the UAE, it's worth noting that the NPQH is seen as equivalent to the UAE headship testing, which the name I forget of exactly what that's called. But if you have an NPQH, you don't have to also complete the local headship qualification.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks. Brigitte Petrovic says, I am the head of my center and the exam officer for 16 years. There's no question attached. I should read these first. But would you advise which leadership NPQ would you advise for someone with Brigitte's experience?
I'm the head of my centre and exam officer for the past 16. Either SL or H, depends on, I don't know how big the centre is, but I would say get in touch with us via email or online chat, and we'll be able to advise.
All right, brilliant. Anonymous attendee says, time-wise, will I have sufficient time to do this qualification? And I do not teach it currently due to... Okay, so I think this person's concerned about having time to complete the qualification whilst completing their job. I think we do deliver them quite flexibly, don't we, the NPQs?
It is a flexible course, Tom. And the reality is, if you look in the UK, there's 11,000 people on them. So people can manage them, and they do manage their time. Within the course, within each cycle, it's split into cycles. There's a great deal of flexibility. So you are able to dip into it weekly, or some people are able to, because of their duties and responsibilities, hit it every month or so and really dive into it. The only thing that's really important is the face-to-face sessions are compulsory. So it's important that they attend them.
Okay, brilliant, guys. Okay, we will have two more questions. Another one from Tanya. She says, can the schools share your accreditations on their website and communicate about it?
So in terms of sharing that you've completed and you've accredited, and lots of people put NPQ acronyms after their name, on emails or on titles. If you mean that, then yes, absolutely. Or sharing that you've completed the program or undertaken the program, yes. If you want anything more in terms of a formal partnership, then I would suggest you get in contact with probably myself. You can reach me through the inquiries email box, and we can find out.
I might just add, we do encourage all of our graduates to share photos of themselves with their certificates. So if you do complete the qualification, and if you do get your certificate, then please post it on our Twitter or on our Facebook feed. And yeah, we'd love to shout about it from our end.
And we're always looking for more followers if you want to join us.
Oh yeah, please do. Please follow our social media accounts. Okay, another one from Brigitte. Do you have feedback from current heads who work full-time and how they were able to complete this qualification while they were working? Also, I'm rarely in a classroom because I have very busy job responsibilities. Is it a requirement for those who apply for this qualification to have access to a classroom and teaching with a specific year group?
So no, so you can be a head who works full-time without classroom responsibilities. If you get in touch with us on inquiries, tell us where you're based, and we may be able to find someone who's undertaking the program from the same school group or same location. I don't want to guarantee that we can, but we put the word out, and then people can kind of connect if they're happy to do so.
Referring to what I said earlier, in terms of time management, we've got thousands of people on these courses in position. This morning, I mean, which was a greater commitment, is to the executive leadership, and there I was on a face-to-face. There were 20 participants on just today's, all in position in high achieving international, highly recognized international schools, really enjoying the course and networking with one another and engaging in the learning. And what's our pass rate, Jamie? It's huge, isn't it? It's high. It's like 98%. Is it
yes,
like that?
95% plus
95.
pass rate.
There we go. Satisfaction, 98%.
Yes.
All right, amazing stuff. Okay, this will be the last question, and it's from George Schofield. How often do these courses run? I understand the course starts in February. When would the next course begin?
Yep, so next course starts in February. As you said there, the following intake will be October 2023. So they start twice a year, February's and October's.
Brilliant. I think that that brings us to a close. Thanks for all of your questions. They've really helped us to think more about the programs. Hopefully they've given you the answers you need. If you have any more questions, then you can contact us through our website, on the live chat, through email or by phone. I'm going to share a recording of this webinar with everybody who attended and everybody who signed up, and we'll share the slides as well. And yeah, please stay in touch and get those questions over to us. The application deadline is the 16th of December for a spring start. So head over to our website now if you'd like to apply. Thanks once again. It's been really interesting, really fascinating, and take care, everybody.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks, everyone.